our Q&A. We've got a microphone here and a microphone here. If you want to ask questions, come on up. We've got a volunteer to help you. We're giving you, is it 2 minutes? 2 minutes. But although we're giving you 2 minutes, we'd still rather have questions, not speeches. And Cindy, if I can ask the first question. There have been a few conflicting accounts of your meeting with George Bush a few months after Casey died. So can you take a moment now to tell us, since you were there, what actually happened in that meeting? And what were your impressions of George?
Well, that's going to take longer than a few minutes, but you know, the Reader's Digest version is that we were invited to Fort Lewis, Washington to meet with the president. We were told he wanted to have a sit down with us. I took 5 framed pictures of Casey. As a family, we decided we weren't going to challenge him on the reasons for the war. We wanted to use the short time we had with him to show him Casey and to talk about Casey. And he didn't want to look at the pictures. He never said Casey's name. He called him your loved one. He never would say him or her. You know, he wouldn't say him. He would say your loved one. And he called me Mom the whole time. He didn't even know our names. He didn't know Casey's name. He walked in here, he said, so who are we honoring here? And we couldn't believe that the leader of the free world didn't even know our son's name. And my other 3 children were there too. And he walked up to my daughter Carly, who is very outspoken. I don't know where she got that from. He said, I wish I could bring your loved one. I'm a gifted mimic, by the way. I wish I could bring your loved one back to fill the hole in your heart. And Carly goes, yeah, so do we. And he goes, I'm sure you do. And he turned his back on her and ignored her for the rest of the time. Then he came up to me one time and he said, Mom, I can't imagine losing a loved one, whether it be an aunt, an uncle, a cousin. He was like saying everything except son. You know, and cousin third removed. And I went, hold on a second, Casey was my son. And I think you can imagine it because you have daughters. I said, try to imagine if one of your daughters was killed in this war. And I said, trust me, you don't even want to go there. And he told me, you're right, I don't. So this is what happened when we met with him. He was callous. His eyes didn't match what his heart was saying. And we could tell he was already on to the next thing. He wasn't even really present there with us. And you know, it took us a while to process it because number one, we were all still in a state of shock. The shock doesn't even wear off for like a year. And after the shock wears off, that's when the real pain sets in. So anyway, that's basically what happened. And then, oh, and I said, why did you invite us? We didn't vote for you, and we're not going to vote for you again. And he said, it's not about politics, Mom. And I was like, okay, peace, Dad. And so then he comes out in the RNC when he accepted the nomination and said, I meet with the families of the fallen. They tell me that they're praying for me and to complete the mission. And so I said, well, I don't know why I believed him, but that's when I started to actively campaign against him for the 2004 elections.
We're going to do alternate microphones here, and I'm going to start with on my left.
What do those bumper stickers mean? People drive around on the car and say support our troops?
I think what they really mean is support the president. You know, because they're not supporting the troops. By supporting the president, you're harming the troops. And by being pro-Bush means you're pro-Bush means you're anti-American. George Bush is nothing about American values. We don't torture, we don't kill innocent people. You know, we don't imprison people without due process. So I really think, because I always say, you know, you have to support the troops, you have to support their mission. Why? You know, I think the only way we can support our troops now is to get them the hell out of there.
Definitely want to thank you, ladies. The country owes you a great debt for what you do. And I certainly wouldn't want to lose this little guy to this machine. One thing I would just like to encourage you to put into your addresses is to, you're asking people to take action, and you can give me your feedback on what you think about getting people more involved in electoral politics as action, because there's so many of these chicken lily Congress people, I love that, that was great, that are running unopposed, even right here next to us in Harrisonburg, Virginia. And it's just astounding to me. So I personally am running for Congress because I have to do that. I just can't let people run unopposed. And as you folks have said, even the Republicans and Democrats we can't count on, okay? So I'm running independent. I encourage others here to please do the same. And if you could do that, you have the microphone in this world. You can bring 500 people to run for office somewhere in this country. Give some real opposition. Thank you.
Well, you're exactly right. We all have to step up to the plate. We all have to make some sacrifices and do some things that we never thought we would do. So you may not have ever thought about running for office, and it may seem like a pipe dream. It may be something you don't really want to do. But like the gentleman said, right now we really need to we need to oppose all of these jerks that are in there screwing up our country. So it takes good people to stand up and do it. And please, look in your conscience. Talk to your family, your friends. Somebody needs to stand up here and do these things, and it could be you. It should be you. If it's not you, it should be the person sitting next to you. So just somebody in your row, in every row, right now, let's just find somebody that will volunteer to run for something. I mean, it's as simple as that. And everybody in this auditorium will work for you. Yeah, it's not that simple, but really, listen, we do need to get a lot more candidates out there.
I think we should quit voting for the lesser of two evils, because you're still going to get an evil person. I think that we're not going to get leaders of conscience until we start voting with our consciences. And the Democrats, I'm a Democrat, I'm a registered Democrat still. I'm a member of the board of the Progressive Democrats of America. I think that in theory our system is good, but in practice it sucks. And right now, to even have a Progressive Democrats of America to me seems just so wrong. I think every Democrat should be progressive and fight for truth and work for values. But, that's not right. I believe that the Democrats can be very good on some issues, like especially social issues. But when it comes to war, they're getting their strings pulled and their pockets lined by the same people that are pulling the strings and lining the pockets of the Republican Party. And except for maybe 70 or 80 members out of a 435-member Congress, they've all been really crappy on the war. Ann and I are using our really good vocabulary today. Jerks, crappy. But I don't really have a lot of faith in electoral politics, even though I'm going to work my tail off for anti-war candidates in the upcoming fall elections. Our electoral system is corrupt. It's broken. And if we don't get paper trails on our voting machines, we might as well not even go vote. Off their chairs and stand for something, they're going to snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory. November is a long time away. How many more people are going to be killed while they're worried about about politics, and we have to work every day to fix the system and to bring our troops home, not count on November, because that's going to be too late for thousands of people in the world.
Go ahead.
I was wondering if you could remind us about comparing the momentum of the anti-Vietnam peace movement and the current peace movement. Is there any way you can remind us of that and compare the two?
Well, I wasn't involved in the Vietnam peace movement because I was in elementary school, but from what I understand from history is that that didn't start really until 10,000 soldiers had been killed. This peace movement started before the war started. And there were thousands of college students out, there was a draft. There was forced conscription then. And I don't believe that we should have forced conscription. I don't believe that anybody should be used for the war machine. But I believe that we have a large and viable movement. And just because it's not covered by the corporate media doesn't mean it's not happening. You know, so, and I think it's just a matter of, like I said, like he said, that I said in the introduction, that we have to convince every American that they have a tangible stake in what's going on, just like the immigration movement. You know, they were all out because their parents or they were going to get deported if this mess went through. So we have to convince everybody that George Bush is damaging every single American. And if they don't get out before we know it, we're going to wake up and we're going to be in concentration camps. You know, it's just as simple as that. And I want to know why I was just wearing a t-shirt and I got arrested and she was yelling and she just got escorted out. I don't think that's very fair.
You get a better story.
That's true.
Sir.
And Sandy, I want to thank you both. I think you are tremendous warriors. I do feel, of course, that Bush represents the American mentality, not just the silent majority, but he really represents the majority of people in this country. Now, perhaps your efforts and efforts of others like you will be able to change that. What I'm concerned about, though, is atonement and reparations. It seems to me that we've done a lot of damage, as you have indicated, in Iraq. Do you feel that the United States should atone and pay the Iraqis reparations for the destruction that's been done?
Yes, I said that in my speech. I said that the Congress should be voting money for reparations, not for more killing. And I don't agree with abandoning the people of Iraq. That's not what the peace movement is saying. So, no, I believe that they need all the help. They deserve all the help that they want because it's their country, and they can say, if they want Halliburton to stay, they can say Halliburton stay. If they want money from the American government, they can take money from the American government, but it's their country, and they're the ones that are going to have to decide what they want from us.
And if it indeed is the Iraqis that rebuild their own country, they can do it about 1/100 the cost that the American corporations are gouging the U.S. taxpayer.
And I want to remind everybody that his approval ratings are down to 29%. There's only 3 states in the entire country where he has it over 50% or higher. 50% in Wyoming, 51% in Utah, and 52% in Idaho. And after Camp Casey, Ann and I are going to go and live in those 3 states and get those below 50%.
Yes, hi. George Bush says that he's a born-again Christian. And as a born-again Christian, I don't see how you can go and kill anyone. And so my question is, do you think that it's wise to kind of magnify this aspect of his personal faith? And if so, how would you go about doing it?
Well, you know, it's hard to tell deep in one's heart. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that everybody carries around.
No, it's not hard to tell.
Well, and I will go on with that because I think you're exactly right. What I would say about George Bush, though, is that if you look at the policies that have come out through his administration that are based on what he claims to be as a born-again Christian, and his desire to create what I think is an unconstitutional, illegal program, which is the funding of faith-based organizations to do social work for the United States. And that if you look at the amount of money that's going into churches and then the voting patterns of those churches, that indeed the born-again Christian is a born-again vote-getter on how he's using the political system of the United States and using it based on supposedly his religious beliefs.
Well, also, I was a Catholic youth minister for 8 years. I was a follower of Jesus Christ. Now I'm not so much into organized religion, but, you know, I think the Jesus Christ that I still love, that I still try to emulate my life after, like many other prophets that have gone before me, like Martin Luther King Jr., and Henry David Thoreau, and Dorothy Day, and Mother Teresa, and people like that. George Bush isn't about them at all. You know, I don't call it Christianity, I call it Bushianity. You know, because the Jesus Christ that I grew up with is not a warmonger. He said, blessed are the peacemakers. He said, thou shalt not kill. He said there's only 2 commandments, love God and love your neighbor. And I love that bumper sticker that said when Jesus said love your neighbor, he probably meant don't kill them. Another thing is George Bush, and what happens, and I believe that a lot of war happens because of this fundamental belief in religions. You know,
Excuse me if I may interrupt. Just to say that as I hear you talk, yes, that's very simple. But as I don't remember your name, I'm sorry, but Anne, as you talk and then you begin to get the polemic into the details of the stuff, this isn't a president who really, he uses those kinds of arguments to obfuscate the real deal. And so I would just, my own personal suggestion is to do this very simple thing, to remind people who Jesus is. And to remind him who he is. Not, I mean, if you say you're a born-again Christian, you're still serving him. So this isn't just some Jesus who you grew up with. This is a very alive Jesus who's with us now, even as we speak. And so this is the avenue that I would advocate, is to actually remind the people who George Bush says he serves as a born-again Christian.
Well, it's just basically being pro-life.
Right.
You know, and George Bush is nothing about being pro-life. I don't have any friends left that I had before Casey was killed because they said they voted for George Bush because he's pro-life. I said if George Bush was pro-life, Casey would still be alive. You know, and I believe being pro-life is honoring all life, not just pre-born life, but life when it comes out too. And so we even see that the Christian right are distancing themselves from George Bush because he hasn't gotten rid of abortion. He hasn't spoken out against gay marriage anymore. So, you know, a lot of people are waking up to the fact that this man is nothing about being a Christian.
Go ahead, sir.
I have to say, it's been a long day. I'm not really prepared for this, but I am a Vietnam era veteran, and also I was discharged from the Army during the war as a conscious objector. This is a very emotional issue for me. It's what I went through, and I'd hoped I'd never see this happen again during my lifetime, but it is. I'm also a anti-war demonstrator during the Vietnam War as well. And I saw many things during that time period. I do wonder, where are the 700,000 people that that we had at that time. I'm also a former chair for the Democratic Party here, and I feel strongly we have failed our people as a party. We have a local issue here I think maybe you all can help us with. Perhaps we have what's called the National Ground Intelligence Center here in Charlottesville. Our Board of Supervisors recently approved rezoning to expand their facilities by about 250,000 square feet and bring in 1,000 employees. I'm not quite clear on what they do at this facility, but I think it's where they plan the murders that occur in Iraq. And nobody said anything about this. And our Board of Supervisors has not helped us out. I don't really want this facility in my community. It's really against my beliefs. Thou shalt not kill really applies, I think. So if there's any assistance you can give us here, perhaps it's a political issue. We have elections coming up this November, and we really need to get out and get these people out of office. I'm sorry to preach, but thank you.
Thank you.
We have a question on my left.
Last March, I met Stowe Talbot. He's now the president of the Brookings Institution. He used to work under President Clinton when he was in office, and they've been good buddies. But as part of a public lecture that he gave, he talked about how the country is evenly divided between Republicans and Democrats. How the nation is so divisive that this division is really unhealthy. And I don't believe that. I believe that the nation isn't evenly divided, that it's a product of what, in part, they want us to believe, what the media conveys it as. But I believe that a bigger problem is that there's a major lack of education of the American public in general about what the political parties do and what they stand for and how politics works. And I realize that your organization is doing quite a bit to assist with educating the public on the crimes of George W. Bush and his cronies. But I think there needs to be much more of a major push in general as to what's going on, because it doesn't get through to most people. There's a lot of apathy. And one of the differences between, I'm a little too young to know the Vietnam era, but I do know my history to some extent. And your generation, or at least the generation slightly older than you, actually believed in education and the promise of a better society. This generation, my generation, has no driving mechanism behind that. And where do you see your organization a couple of years from now, or even 10 years down the line, as helping to promote that, especially when the mainstream media is in the pocket of big corporations? Thank you.
Well, we're going to, of course, our troops are going to come home from this war. And the gentleman over here said, he never thought we'd be in this again. I was given this peace medallion from someone that used to protest the Vietnam War. He said he put it in his jewelry box when the troops came home, and he got it out for this war, and he thought I was going to be proud of him. I said, why did you put it away? Why did you just quit? Because we know that they're planning the next war, even as this one's winding down, we hope. And like was said, that this has to be a peace movement. It can't be an anti-war movement. We're against war, but we're for peace. And what we have to do, our organization has to do, and we're about war and peace. We can't be about everything, even though we care about other issues, is that we have to redirect the profits of the war profiteers. We have to shut down people who profit off of war. And we have to educate people to stop giving their children to the war machine, to kill them in wars. And when we shut down the war machine, our communities will have the money they need to nurture all life. Everybody will be sheltered, everybody will be fed. Like I said, if they want to go to university, they should go for free. And abortion will always be legal but rare, because people will have jobs and we'll live in a society where people will want to bring their children up in. So this is my promise, is that even though we forgot the lessons of Vietnam, I'll never let this country forget the lessons of Iraq. And I'll never let them forget the face of my son. And while I'm living, this will never happen again. And if you think I'm lying, ask George Bush. I think he has figured out I'm pretty tenacious. So that's what my organization is going to be about. We founded the Camp Casey Peace Institute. We're going to teach nonviolent resolution to conflicts from kids from 2 years old up to presidents of countries. And we're going to live in a society where we realize that killing to solve problems is barbaric, whether you're the neighbor or whether you're the president of the United States. So it's gonna take all of us, not just Ann and I sitting up here to do this.
This past October, I lost one of my best friends in Iraq, and his cousin and his brother both are. They talked to me about how much they want to go back to Iraq and fight for him, and I don't know what exactly I could tell them to, go against them, kind of thing. So.
Yeah, well, it's tough. I mean, when somebody gets killed and then it's your buddy and all, and you want to go for revenge and things like that. But I think the thing maybe to approach them with is the overall morality of this thing, and how did we get into it in the first place? And sometimes for some young men, it's really hard to get through their skull that the better course is not to go kill more people, to continue the violence, but to honor what happened to their friend by not pursuing the same type of thing that he or she did, that joining the Army and then getting sent off to do the bidding of a failed policy, a horrible, illegal policy that an administration puts onto them. And show that there are other ways that they can be of service to his honor, rather than going to kill people, to kill more people.
And if he wants to take revenge if they want to take revenge for your friend's death, they should work to remove George Bush from office and bring the troops in. Thank you, good luck.
The evening's going a little long. We've got 2 more questions on this side and 1 more question on this side. And then when we're done, I want to give Cindy and Ann a chance to go out to the lobby where they're going to be signing books. So let's just try to wrap this up. Go ahead.
Yes. Really, I'm sorry for the loss of your son, Cindy, and I don't have no emotion whatsoever. I have a son. But I am sorry for all these chairs that empty. What happened? Do we knock on the door of neighborhood and we say, look, someone gonna talk about peace and justice today? I don't went to my neighbors and I said it. And I think it's your fault and my fault that these chairs are empty. Thank you.
Thank you.
What are some ways the peace movement can target the multinational corporations that are fueling and profiting from this war?
Well, we have a boycott of Exxon. And I don't have like a hybrid car. We could go do that thing, but I would rather walk 1,000 miles than to buy a gallon of gas at Exxon. And it's really hard because there's so many war profiteers. You know, General Electric is a war profiteer and they own NBC. Why don't we boycott NBC and boycott everybody who advertises on NBC? But the best thing we can do is to educate people that our military is only there to make the world safe for corporate colonialism. And that's the reason our children are dying. It's not about keeping America safe. We need a military. We need a small military to defend ourselves. But there's not very many more people in the world that we have to defend ourselves from. And if we only realize that China could destroy us by just pushing a computer key, but they won't because we're their biggest market, that's what we have to do. We have to educate the grassroots. Do not allow your child to be cannon fodder for the corporations. And when the cannon fodder dries up, the wars will dry up, their profits will dry up. We need to find alternative ways for them to make money. I'm saying everybody that profits off war, instead of building bombs and guns and tanks and planes, we put them in spacesuits and have them clean up the Superfund sites that the military has created all over the world. Everywhere our military goes, it's a Superfund site. It's contaminated. Let's do peaceful things. Let's repair the damage that we've done to the world instead of inflicting more damage on the world. And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take education because we can't, not very many of us can boycott Halliburton, you know, but we can educate people what our country is really about. And the classical definition is of a fascist state is a state where corporations rule the government, and the government rules the media. People, we have a fascist state.
When I heard about Camp, whatever it is, Camp Casey, a funny little story popped into my mind. My school is mainly Democrat. When we talk about politics in the class, the teacher is actually usually not in the classroom or else we'll get beat up. About everybody in the class says they like everybody but Bush. I mean, like, nobody in there, like, in his regime. Usually there are about one or two people that pop up that say, I like Bush. One girl, she was from Texas, and she always wore this shirt that said, don't mess with Texas. And now, it just keeps on reeling into my mind. I always say, don't worry, I will, because of Bush. And I'm so glad that you actually messed with Texas.
Tough act to follow, but we'll take one last question.
It seems to me that we don't really know much now about the situation in Iraq that we did not know at the time of the last election. We knew then that there were no weapons of mass destruction, the premise of the whole thing. We knew that there were photographs of people being tortured, and we knew that the insurgency was growing. How do we account for the fact that the slim majority re-elected President Bush?
I think I already kind of went through that in my speech. We had voter fraud, voter suppression, voter irregularities. We had exploitation of gay marriage on all the ballots. And I account for the fact that George Bush won because they cheated. You know, 2 elections in a row, they had secretaries of state that were chairmen of the Republican parties in their states. And this has got to be something that's stopped. Like I said, we have to have paper trails for our voting machines. We have to have instant runoff recounts so we can vote for our conscience and not vote for the lesser of two evils. And we have to stop letting the secretaries of state be involved in the political parties. They should be something in our country that's called nonpartisan. But they have been very partisan, and the people who make the voting machines are partisan also. I mean, the DeBolt guy guaranteed George Bush Ohio, and all the exit polls said that Kerry won Ohio. And lo and behold, they said George Bush won it. So it's all just about cheating. That's why George Bush was reelected.
Well, a lot of it's voter apathy too. I mean, there are a lot of people that should have been out to vote, and they never made it. They ended up, some of them that voted against their own economic interests, their own social interests. And, you know, why did they do that? Yeah, why? Well, some of it, I think that there are certain groups that get paid off. Short-term payoffs that mean long-term disasters for them, for certain ethnic groups that allow themselves to be pulled in by the Republican Party and will be ultimately just, I mean, they've just been done in by them. So.
Well, you know what too is, I really hate to say this, no, I really don't. John Kerry was a very weak candidate. You know, he ran a horrible campaign, and what I see now what's happening is he's starting to speak out against the war, and he's sponsoring some resolutions finally, because he's planning on running for president again. But he can't run the same campaign he ran in 2004 because Hillary's going to run that campaign. So he has to run a campaign now, the one that we wish he would have ran in 2004. And if he would have ran that campaign saying, you know, I made a terrible mistake when I gave George Bush the authority to go to war. And if I had it all to do over again, no, I would not give him the same authority. And if you elect me, I'll start bringing the troops home immediately. He would have won by so many votes, they wouldn't have been able to cheat. So that's another thing too. We had a terrible, weak candidate in John Kerry. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you, first of all, I thank all of you for being here this evening and participating in this provocative discussion. Cindy Sheehan's books, Terry Allard's CDs are going to be available in the lobby, and Cindy will be out there for signing. Thank you to the New Dominion Bookstore for providing the books and making the signing possible. We'll take time to thank the people who made this event possible. From the CCPJ Speakers Committee, Sue Chase, Lori Delahanty, Judy Johnson, Matt Kindig, Sarah Lansman, and David Swanson. Jenna Moore is filming the event. Thank you to Sean Tubb of the CVille Podcast Network for recording the evening and making it available as a podcast from CVillePodcast.com.